Thanks for spending 10 minutes of your Wednesday with CNN Student News. I'm Carl Azuz at the CNN Center. There are more than 1,000 U.S. troops in West Africa helping prevent the spread of Ebola. Thousands more are set to deploy. For some in the Army, there's a mandatory 21-day quarantine when they return to their base in Italy. But for civilians who've traveled to the U.S. from Ebola-stricken areas, that's up for debate. The U.S. government has revised its guidelines a couple times now. Some criticize it for overreacting to the Ebola threat. Some call CDC's guidelines too confusing. Some criticize it for not doing enough to protect Americans. But here's the thing. The CDC doesn't have the authority to enforce its guidelines. States do. And a few have added their own regarding who gets quarantined and when. It's not illegal. The Constitution allows states to impose stricter health regulations than the federal government, but they can be challenged.
San Francisco's Chinatown was giving a year-long quarantine order after a suspected case of the bubonic plague in the early 1900s. This black and white video shows men, most likely the health department committee, checking for disease. And then there's Milwaukee, Wisconsin. In the late 1800s, this startling historic illustration shows how a smallpox outbreak forces people into isolation hospitals. Perhaps America's most famous quarantine happened right behind me on Ellis Island. 12 million people were processed. More than 2 million would be hospitalized or quarantined. CNN's review of quarantine and isolation statutes across the country reveals that all 50 states have the power to isolate and quarantine. At least 5 states specifically detail their power to treat the sick involuntarily. At least 4 states mean business. Violating the order is a felony. Wisconsin could have the stiffest fine, $10,000. Mississippi, the longest jail sentence, 5 years. The Centers for Disease Control is not recommending mandatory quarantines for everyone traveling from West Africa.
Deeply concerned about the Ebola situation.
But a pen stroke could change that if President Obama exercises his executive power, allowing federal authorities to detain and medically examine people traveling between states or entering the country. What prevents the government from overstepping its powers?
Whenever a citizen is incarcerated or confined, you can go into court and say to a judge, I've been locked up without good cause and I want a hearing on the issue.
So, are fears about Ebola well-founded? Also up for debate. The World Health Organization says there have been more than 10,000 suspected cases of Ebola in this year's outbreak. It's the worst in recorded history. The CDC says on average, 36,000 people in the U.S. die from the flu every year. Still, one difference is that people are far more likely to survive the flu.
It does not spur debates about whether you'll be infected while flying or make doctors don hazmat suits or cause local governments to impose quarantines. But between 5 and 20% of the U.S. population between now and February will likely come down with the flu. And although most people will suffer only fever, aches, or chills, for the very young, the very old, or those who are already sick, the flu can be fatal.
Your defenses are weakened by the flu virus, and a bacteria can come in and set up shop in the lungs. So when that happens, you know, your lungs are compromised, you might have very bad cough, you might even become unable to breathe without assistance.
Unlike Ebola, which is hard to get, the flu is easily transmitted by casual contact on public transit, in restaurants, at any public event. And flu pandemics have ravaged the world. In 1918, the Spanish flu killed an estimated 30 to 50 million people, perhaps many millions more. Still, less than half of the U.S. population receives a flu shot. So the CDC says in any given year, 200,000 people will get a severe case of the flu, so severe they'll wind up in the hospital.
So we've got this segment called Roll Call. It's a chance to have your school announced on CNN Student News. There's now only one way to submit a request, and you need to be at least 13 years old. Go to cnnstudentnews.com, click where it says Roll Call, and leave a comment at the bottom of our transcript page. We'll pick 3 schools from each day's transcript. You can make one request every day, but spamming will not help you. Please tell us your school name, city, state, and mascot. Good luck.
Time for the shout out. What is the southernmost US state? If you think you know it, shout it out. Is it Louisiana, Hawaii, Texas, or Florida? You've got 3 seconds. Go. At around 21 degrees north latitude, Honolulu, Hawaii is farther south than Key West, Florida. That's your answer, and that's your shout out.
Hawaii's Big Island is even farther south than the capital in Honolulu, and it's Mount Kilauea, one of the most active volcanic masses on Earth, is threatening to destroy a village named Pahoa. It's a natural disaster in slow motion, a lava flow with heat so high it melts rock. It was just feet away from homes when we produced this show. Humans haven't had great success in stopping lava flows, the thing that's most effective when the volcano stops erupting.
Right over here, that roadblock, that's the way the lava's headed. And this is the main road of town. Lava on Main Street. In Pahoa on the Big Island, a 2,000-degree river of molten rock is just a few hundred feet away from the town, and there is no way to stop it. Residents are on a moment's notice to evacuate as the superheated stone threatens the town of 950.
Everybody, including myself, is quite nervous. We can't see the future. The flow does what the flow does.
Hawaii's famous Kilauea volcano has continuously erupted since 1983. Usually the spectacular lava flows pour south, eventually reaching the sea. But in June, a new flow started heading the opposite way to the northeast, the dark, oozing mass consuming everything in its path. And experts say the lava has picked up speed as it heads directly for Pahoa. Hawaii's governor signing a request asking for a presidential disaster declaration and for federal aid.
As it gets closer, the key is communication with the community, keeping people informed, and everybody continue to work around the clock.
Officials going door to door, warning residents as the flow inches dangerously close. Already, some roads have been forced to close as the lava overtakes them. With many residents fearing they'll be cut off, Hawaii County is rebuilding alternate gravel roads around the expected path of the lava. People downwind from the smoke have been advised to stay indoors.
I have asthma myself, and the smoke conditions, if they increase, are going to be hard on some people.
It actually has been raining off and on here, but the experts say that has absolutely no impact on the relentlessness of the lava. So the only hope this town has is that it either suddenly stops or turns direction. Otherwise, the same force of nature that created the Hawaiian Islands could very well destroy this town.
We've got some folks watching today from the Northern Mariana Islands, just northeast of Guam in the Western Pacific Ocean. Big shout out to Tanapug Middle School, our viewers in Saipan. In the northern U.S., it's the Mount Rushmore State up next. The Tigers of Harrisburg High School in Harrisburg, South Dakota are on the roll. And in the Peach State in Kathleen, Georgia, hello to the Gators of Mossy Creek Middle School. A British technology company has introduced an idea for a passenger plane without windows. Now, before you ask, where's the fun in that? Have a look. It's as if the whole thing is a window. Don't worry, this is not a plane made of glass. Cameras capture live video of the scene outside and then stream it on the displays on the plane's walls. The company says without actual windows, planes can be lighter, use less fuel, and have more room inside. Plus, view. It's as if every traveler can have his head in the clouds without actually having his head in the clouds. Unless you heights, it looks plain awesome. Really fly. Video technology for the wing. From out of thin air, it really seems to fuse a lot of good ideas together. I'm Carl Azuz for CNN Student News, and I'm taking off.